Hello and welcome to another edition of Political Insider. I'm your host, Herald-Tribune political editor Zac Anderson. With me today is Kevin Griffith, the vice chair of the Sarasota County Democratic Party. Today we're recapping the Democratic National Convention, which wrapped up last night with Hillary Clinton giving her acceptance speech. Kevin, conventions are about a lot of things, party unity, kind of getting the tone of your message for the general election. For Clinton, though, a big thing for her was just sort of reintroducing herself to the general public. She's been in the public spotlight for a long time. There's sort of these calcified views of her that have sort of built up over the years, questions about whether she's trustworthy, whether she's, kind of a warm person, whether she's a little bit too politically calculating. What do you think? Did this convention do what it needed to do to try and rehabilitate her image a little bit?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think part of what went towards that was a lot of character witnesses that she presented that weren't her. You know? And I think one of the best examples of that was Chelsea Clinton explaining actual things that she did as a grandmother. You know, the grandmother-in-chief and helping with Charlotte, her granddaughter, and not just Chelsea, not just Bill. I think Joe Biden and President Clinton, all of those as character witnesses, it really did, I think, help rejuvenate.
Sure. Yeah, and there was a lot of people, there was a lot of Democratic stars at this convention, which was interesting. You had, like you said, Biden, you had Bill Clinton, you had President Obama, you had Michelle Obama, and some wondered if, that group, all of whom gave pretty good speeches, would overshadow her a little bit. How do you think she did last night?
I think that plays exactly into Hillary Clinton's theme, and that is stronger together. This campaign is pretty stark differences. It's pretty clear. I alone, that's Donald Trump. Stronger together, we're in this together, Hillary Clinton. And it's exemplified exactly by what you just said and by the team that the Democrats put on the stage. You had Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, President Obama, President Clinton, Joe Biden, Tim Kaine, Senator Sherrod Brown, I thought gave a great... That's the team. And that was part of her theme last night is, we get things done in America and we're at our best when everyone is contributing, in stark contrast to Donald Trump, who gave his speech and is running strongly on the argument that I can do it alone.
And that's interesting. You mentioned the stronger together theme. There's also it seems like conscientious effort by Democrats to try and present a more optimistic message. They think that Trump was a lot of doom and gloom last week. Obviously, some of this is just the party out of power is going to criticize what's happening with the party in power. The party in power is going to try and defend their record and say that things are, going well and that, the country's on the right track. But how significant do you think the different tone and message is here? You heard a lot of, the optimism, a lot of, the country is strong, it is on the right track. I just wonder if you think that all that glosses over some of the very real problems that the country is facing, that people feel this economic insecurity, concerns about terrorism. Do you think she adequately addressed those anxieties?
Well, let me answer that in 2 points, in 2 parts. First, the optimism. Democrats are inherently optimistic. I mean, that's probably what makes them Democrats. And that was definitely a contrast in these conventions, and I typically think it always is. Even in 2008, when Obama was the candidate of change against 8 years of George Bush, it was an optimistic change. Now, the second point that you touched on was this and really I think what you're going to is this working class base of voters who polling at least suggests now may be open to someone outside the Democratic Party.
They're concerned that they haven't had a raise in years, that that these blue-collar jobs have gone away. They see that there's conflicts between the police and inner cities here. They see terrorism. I mean, isn't there some very real concerns that people have, and did she address
They are absolutely real concerns, and I think Hillary went pretty far in addressing those. She definitely reached out to them and said, those are real concerns. I hear you, and you have legitimate concerns. But she also said she's the candidate that will do the work, not just give you the soundbite, but will actually do the work to make those changes that those people, the working class people, especially the middle class, want. And so that's sort of the two aspects of what you were talking about in your first question, about the optimism, but also that working class angst. I mean, I'm a Democrat. I come from a union area of Ohio. That's where I was born and raised. And that's why I'm a Democrat. You know, it's the working class. It's the middle class.
Sure. And that was a really strong message that Bernie Sanders had. And one reason that he really caught fire was, you know, this kind of economic fairness, you know, message that he was putting out there. It was interesting to see. Obviously, we mentioned unity earlier, and the team that Clinton has behind her. The biggest question was how much the Sanders people would get behind her, because, you know, he did command a sizable portion of the Democratic electorate. He did everything that he possibly could. I mean, he really went all in for her at this convention, and yet there was holdouts all the way up until the end, people who were even protesting or shouting things during Clinton's speech. I mean, it died down a lot by the end, but how do you see this? I mean, is the party unified enough going forward? You
know, we're the Democratic Party, and that means we're the party of ideas, and people have different ideas, and they're very passionate about those. And I think, by and large, from what you saw throughout the maturation of the convention, that by the end, the Democrats were where they wanted to be. But let me touch on just a few points related to, you know, certain provisions that a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters were for. How about family paid medical leave? Hillary Clinton made that a specific point and a key point in her speech. She said, if you are saying I'm playing the gender card, then deal me in on that issue. Sure. And that was a key issue that Bernie, I mean, amongst many, but that was a key issue. So on the platform, what the Democrats actually stand for, Hillary Clinton has joined with Bernie Sanders in his voters.
It is interesting. I mean, she did present, she made some rhetorical gestures towards the middle, but her policy agenda, the things that she talked about, were fairly liberal, fairly progressive, and you wonder if you know, that is, you know, centrist enough to appeal in this general election. Do you think that you know, the Democrats have the right policy prescriptions?
I do, and I'm very proud of this very progressive platform, and I support it wholeheartedly. And frankly, I'm glad to see that this was the most progressive platform that's been passed in a long time. It reminds me of the Great Society that I studied about so much when I was in school, and it really makes me proud to be part of it.
Last thing here really quickly, you know, Florida is going to be huge in this election. Now we're really moving into the general election phase. How do you see things playing out? There was a lot of nods. Obviously, Florida is a very diverse state. There was a lot of nods in this convention towards diversity and appeals towards the Hispanic and African American community. You know, Clinton really needs those voters to turn out to kind of offset the advantage that Trump has with white working class voters. Do you expect that to be a big theme here in Florida?
Well, two things. One, I don't think Hillary's going to see the white working class voters, because really those are issues that Democrats care about. But secondly, you are right that we are a diverse party, and you know, Tim Kaine obviously who speaks Spanish, and when he was in Miami and the rollout was speaking Spanish, that's going to be an outreach to Hispanic voters as well as other minorities and women. But I will say that one concern I might have overall about the tone of the presidential race is turnout. I think it could get so negative on both sides that sometimes negative campaigning can suppress turnout.
Yeah, that's a big issue.
And for our local candidates, we want a big turnout in Sarasota. So I do hope that, you know, I'll tell you this, we're going to be knocking on doors and making phone calls and trying to bring that turnout as high as possible. But I do worry about these next 100 days and the tone of the campaign. I know the Clinton campaign will have an optimistic message, though.
Well, I think you're right. It is going to be a pretty adversarial campaign. You have two candidates who are really going after each other. I know you're kind of in the trenches here, so I'll be checking in with you throughout the campaign.
Great. I look forward to it.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us. Please tune in again next week for another edition of Political Insider.